We've discovered several ways that biases can get into systems, and now we're going to talk about ways to prevent biases from occurring. Stopping the faulty logic, checking our data, make sure it's representative of the populations, and so forth. There's a general principle going throughout industry now towards AI fairness, and there are even toolkits to help you identify potential problems in your training data and your algorithms if you follow a few principles when running system checks. Now, I don't expect anyone in our classes to become AI data fairness experts, but being aware of these solutions is very helpful when we talk to vendors who supply us AI systems. There are many frameworks for detecting biases. One such framework is to run two versions of the model, one with demographics and one without demographics. Compare the output of both and see if they behave the same. Another approach is to run the algorithm and isolate the variables race, gender, age, and other such labels, and see how the systems compare against each other, and make sure that it's consistent. It does not vary by age or by race, for example. And with this data, we can develop a metric to see how far the results are off from the entire data sets versus our isolated data set. And that metric is our gap measurement that we can use to test subsequent releases of the software or with new test data to see if our distance metric of variability between the model with the isolated label versus the non-isolated label, race, for example, if that gap widens too much, we know we're going the wrong direction in how the algorithm is performing with biases or not. And then finally, there's some movement to adopt an adverse drug event type of protocol to report errors when we have algorithm bias issues. And how we report them also will be the time that we usually respond, our corrective actions, and so forth. But it's a way to formalize our process of correcting algorithm errors when we find them. And that's leading us to the beginnings of AI failure tracking. There's a great tool out there. You can do some research. It's relatively new. But in 2021, there was a good example that showed how the performance of one major EHR system looking for a certain type of illness really did not perform nearly as well as the vendor had claimed, really quite poorly. And as a result, those that are familiar with the study should know that we might not want to use this vendor's tool for that particular illness because there is a problem with it. There are those in industry that believe that the US government and other world governments are going to regulate AI more to prevent these types of problems. A Harvard Business Review article, for example, predicts that explainable AI will be required. Now, based on what we learned about artificial intelligence and machine learning a few lessons ago, we might recall that we don't necessarily know how linking of the neural networks inside the machine learning systems really work. So that might be a challenge for explainable AI. But it's a topic of discussion right now today, 2022. And to put a finer point on that, we have to keep in mind that there are two types of systems that we really should be aware of. Rules-based systems that have human understandable logic, like the clinical decision support system we talked about with the faulty logic for the patient illness level. And then we have neural networks, which are learning-based systems, a lot more complicated to understand, therefore harder to build explainable AI systems. With that said, however, there are techniques to prevent bias in AI systems. We talked about removing race from the inputs. We can also adjust sensitive inputs, try to lessen the impact on the outcomes for those patients. We can also try to get inside the neural networks and manually adjust weights. Some in industry are suggesting this. And then, of course, using the AI fairness toolkits to help us with some of these challenges as well. The final point to consider for reducing algorithm bias is to have algorithm transparency. The more outside individuals understand about what's going on inside the system, the more we can independently confirm whether a bias exists or not. Healthcare IT biases are rampant throughout our industry, and we're just now beginning to discover the depths. So this is a very important topic to consider as new systems replace older systems. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this very high level surface view on algorithm bias is useful and valuable. If you have any questions at all, you can feel free to reach me at my Charter Oak email or my personal business email, artofpatientmatching@gmail.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to ask questions there as well. Thanks so much. See you soon. Oh, and don't forget, like the video and subscribe, of course.